This presentation is the 24-25 adjusted budget for the Monona Grove School District. Today we're going to discuss the 24-25 budget recap, go into the budget timeline, talk in detail about the adjusted budget and the tax levy and mill rate, and then talk about 25-26 budget planning. Just to regroup everyone and get some perspective on where we started, we had a significant dip in fund balance over the course of the past 3 years, to the point that we were reduced to 4% of our expenditures, $2.4 million, in the 23-24 year. In June, the board did approve the balanced 24-25 preliminary budget. However, it was discovered in July that we had a $4 million deficit in the 23-24 budget, and our depletion of our fund balance was significant. Knowing that we had a $4 million deficit in 23-24, it was hard to believe that we would have a balanced 24-25 budget, knowing that there were several expenditures that were budgeted for in 23-24 that we had to include in the 24-25 budget. We did quickly put together a revised 24-25 budget that identified a $1.8 million deficit. With a $1.8 million deficit at the end of the 24-25 year, that would mean that Monona Grove's fund balance would be down to under $1 million at year end June of 2025. Due to the fund balance reduction, the district needed additional cash to pay for operating expenses in October, and that led to the board approving a $7 million operational loan in September. Just to reframe what the district budget timeline looks like, it is a year-long process, and we are at the end of that year-long process here in October, talking about the adjusted budget and the levy certification. The 24-25 adjusted budget includes adjustments from the third Friday count, all our summer hiring, the October 15th aid certification, and our final property valuation. In addition, as we discussed in the preliminary budget, we removed all one-time expenditures. We really looked for, to try to remove all non-mission critical expenditures. We did have to add some additional unbudgeted expenditures related to retirement, some technology leases that we were obligated to. We also looked at some health insurance changes to get some savings for the district. Unfortunately, that was voted down. But we also removed travel and conference expenditures, and we did have a number of staffing reductions through attrition. Some of the staffing reductions that are in this adjusted budget include 3 district office positions, 2 from the HR department and 1 from the student services department. We did have 8.5 teaching positions that were not filled through attrition. Some of these were reductions from the 23-24 year, but most of them were just not filling positions that were originally added in the 24-25 budget. We also did not replace for building subs and some educational assistants. By employee group, you can see some of the changes here from the 23-24 year and what was approved for 24-25 and what we ended up with in actuality for 24-25. So you'll see with the teachers, there was a slight reduction of the number of teachers. However, the board did approve a large increase in the number of teachers. Also, from a director standpoint and coordinators, we had some reductions, and I did talk about special ed assistants and non-rep staff. This did not impact class size. I know that there was a lot of concern about reducing teachers and having our class sizes go up. As you can see, our class sizes all remain near the goal and well within the range in our elementary schools. From an adjusted budget standpoint, you can see here I have the audited numbers for revenues in 22-23, unaudited in 23-24, what we had for our preliminary budget in 24-25, and ultimately our final budget. You'll notice that there is a significant increase in our revenues from the preliminary to adjusted. That is because we did have that $7 million operational loan that is showing on the all other sources line there, that $1.8 million. The majority of that is that $7 million loan. Some other revenue adjustments adjustments that we had to account for, we had 36 less resident students than we projected, which reduced our 3-year average by 11 residents. That resulted in $152,000 less in revenue from the revenue limit. In addition, we had $450,000 more in Fund 38 debt payments. Fund 38 is under the revenue cap, which means that $450,000 is less money that we can use for operational expenditures, and that is, again, primarily due to the $7 million operational loan. I did mention the $7 million loan in our revenue line, and we did have another technology lease. Technology leases are accounted for both in revenue and expenditure in the first year, and then our payments are obviously recorded throughout the years of the life of the lease. State aid did increase by $3.8 million, but it is important to note that state aid is not additional funding. It is property tax relief only. From an expenditure standpoint, you can see that from preliminary to adjusted, we did reduce about $100,000. Again, reasoning there is that we did have to add some expenditures into the mix that were not accounted for in the preliminary budget itself. Fund balance. We talked a lot about fund balance and how it was depleted at the end of the 23-24 year to the almost $2.5 million. The preliminary budget showed the fund balance reducing to $633,000. We were able to, with that operational loan, replenish our fund balance to $7.9 million. However, if we remove that $7 million loan, you would see that we would have an ending fund balance of $962,000, meaning that without the $7 million loan, our budget would be about a $1.5 million deficit. From an all-fund standpoint, we had $84.5 million in expenditures. This is a reduction of 1.4% from the 23-24 year. Our 24-25 final tax levy is slightly increased from the preliminary budget. That is the majority of which is due to the Community Service Fund. We did overspend our Community Service Fund by about $300,000 in 23-24. We did have some fund balance that was able to absorb that, but since we used the majority of the fund balance in the 23-24 year, that caused us to need to increase our levy for the Community Service Fund to cover expenditures. So that's the reason for the increase from preliminary 24-25 to adjusted 24-25. However, it is still under the 23-24 levy amount. From a mill rate perspective, as you can see, our mill rate is still decreased from last year to $9.64, and this chart does show our history of reduction in our mill rate, primarily due to the increase of our state aid. For 25-26, we have a lot of work coming ahead. In November, we will start our enrollment forecast process and our budget forecast and present that 5-year budget forecast to the Finance and Operations Committee. January through March will be the 25-26 budget development, and in April and May, we'll bring things forward through F&O and board for approval of that preliminary budget. And that is the 24-25 adjusted budget for the Monona Grove School District.